Revealed. Billionaire discovers incredible life-changing miracle by Maid for his paralyzed twins. Ethan had it all: a sprawling mansion that glittered in the heart of a serene Chicago suburb, luxury cars parked in a driveway that seemed to stretch for miles, and a reputation that cast shadows on even the biggest titans of industry. But beneath that polished surface lay a man haunted by grief, fighting to build a fortress around a family crumbling from within. Ava and Max, his precious 6-year-old twins, were locked in a world of silence after a terrible accident left them paralyzed. Each day felt like a crushing reminder of his failures, a bottomless pit where hope once thrived. As he glided through the meticulously manicured gardens, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. He carried the weight of his empire like a noose around his neck, suffocating him. His heart, once open and full of dreams, was now encased in walls of despair and dread. He had become a ghost in his own home, a sterile billionaire surrounded by lavish excess but empty inside. Then came Clara, a single mother, immigrant, and maid who juggled 2 jobs just to keep her own children afloat. In the beginning, Ethan merely saw her as another figure passing through the frames of his life. But her laughter, warm like sunshine cutting through a murky sky, began to chip away at his emotional barricade. Clara's resilience shone brightly as she poured love into her own children. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt something stir inside him. He watched as she effortlessly engaged with Ava and Max, her hands coaxing smiles where his had only met frowns. Clara, with her unyielding spirit, introduced them to unconventional therapies adapted from her home country. He observed small flickers of hope: Ava squeezing a toy in her hand, Max letting out a giggle during a messy painting session. It sparked something long forgotten within him, a flicker but not yet a flame. Then came one fateful afternoon at the park. The sun hung low, casting long shadows. Ethan spotted his twins attempting to roll their wheelchairs across the grass, yearning for freedom. Their struggle tore at him, each move a call for help he felt powerless to answer. A tightness gripped his chest as the spark of reality ignited a fierce inner conflict. He had invested so much in tangible success, and yet here were his children crying out, not for money or toys but for connection. "Ethan, we need to think outside the box," Clara urged one evening. "This community can help them heal in ways we haven't explored." Before he could respond, she pressed on passionately, as if she were his last lifeline. Panic overshadowed the budding trust they had begun to cultivate. Could he really rely on others? Was he risking everything: his reputation, his empire? Just as he began to open his heart, the unthinkable happened. A sudden health crisis landed Ava and Max in the hospital, drawing him back into that familiar pit of fear. His heart raced, the walls closing in as he imagined losing them forever. He stormed into Clara, his voice a mixture of fury and desperation. "What have you done?" At that moment he faced the truth. He had disallowed the love that could save them, choosing control over vulnerability. The air around them crackled with tension. How could Ethan embrace a path that challenged everything he believed? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In that moment of heated chaos, the message was clear. The walls were coming down, and with them, Ethan's grip on everything he had ever known was crumbling. A new path beckoned with all the uncertainty of potential failure. Could he learn to let go and embrace a world beyond wealth? As he looked into Clara's eyes, a question loomed larger than any dollar amount could ever encapsulate. Could a billionaire drenched in privilege become a father deserving of love? A storm of hope and doubt brewed on the horizon, leaving Ethan teetering on the edge of transformation. Ethan stood rooted in the moment, the weight of his choices pressing heavily on his chest. Clara's eyes were wide, reflecting concern and an unyielding hope that had the power to pierce the thick armor he had wrapped around himself. He could sense the shift in the air. They were at a breaking point, unable to retreat from the reality that lay before them. "I know this is hard," Clara breathed, her voice softer now, like a lullaby fighting against the storm. But please let us focus on what the twins need. His anger simmered down, replaced by a rush of vulnerability. What if they don't get better? What if I mess everything up again? He hesitated, wrestling with the thoughts that clawed at him. I can't lose them, Clara. They need you to be strong, Ethan. But they need you to be open too, Clara replied, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Her touch was firm yet soothing, grounding him in the chaos that felt like a tightrope walk over a chasm of despair. Ethan's heart raced. What did it mean to be open? Could he really set aside the desires for control that had dominated his life? Thoughts danced in his head, relentless and loud. Yet there was a quiet whisper building within him, urging him to take the risk. He finally let out a shaky breath. Okay, I'll listen. I'll try. A flicker of relief crossed Clara's face. Yet it was mixed with concern. We can start by getting them involved in the community programs therapy offered here. Can be something they need. It's not just physical but emotional too. Ethan nodded, still hesitant but willing to take that first step. Days passed quickly. Hovering over their hospital room, he watched Clara read stories to his children. Laughter slowly filling spaces that had been muted for so long. Lightness filled the air as Ava and Max's spirits lifted, responding to Clara's warmth. As they faced the reality of their circumstances together, Ethan witnessed the unexpected. Clara's bond with his twins blossoming, and slowly his own heart began to thaw. One afternoon, as Clara meticulously painted Ava's nails glittery lilac, her favorite color, Ethan found joy in their small victories. He could hardly remember what true happiness felt like until he sensed it ignite within him, fueled by their laughter. But the glow of rejuvenation was suddenly clouded when Ethan received disturbing news from the hospital. They needed to extend Ava and Max's stay for further treatment, a cost that would be staggering. Faced with the prospect of financial bleeding, panic surged once more. Visions of his empire crumbling flooded his mind. And for a brief moment, the walls he'd tried to break down began to rise again. What if I can't pay for this? The words slipped from his mouth before he could swallow them back. Clara turned, eyes steady and unwavering. What matters most is not the money but the love, Ethan. Focus on that. You're learning to open your heart. Ethan felt a wave of irritation crash over him. But Clara's calm presence reminded him of what they had built together, the newfound spirit that thrived. In the silence, he realized he stood at a crossroads. Would he retreat back into the fortress of control? Or would he lean into this moment of vulnerability? As he gazed down at Ava and Max, his whole world wrapped in those two small bodies, he chose to fight the fear. This was about more than wealth. This was about being present. But life had other plans. Just when he felt ready to embrace this new path, a knock at the door interrupted their moment of tenderness. Clenching his jaw, Ethan opened it, revealing the hospital administrator standing with a serious expression. Mr. Westbrook, we need to discuss your children's treatment plan. Urgently. A pit formed in Ethan's stomach. Which direction was this conversation heading? The administrator stepped into the room, her demeanor almost grave. Ethan's heart sank, the weight of dread heavy in the air. Behind him, Clara instinctively moved closer, taking Ethan's hand in unspoken promise of support. Mr. Westbrook, she began, I understand this is a stressful time for you, and I want to assure you that we're here to help. I have some options regarding your children's treatment that we need to discuss. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. Options? Yes. We've been monitoring their progress closely, she said, her voice steady and soothing, and there are alternative treatments that might benefit them. They come at a high cost, but I believe there are resources we can explore to assist you. Resources? Ethan's brow furrowed. He felt a flicker of hope and skepticism battling within him. What could they possibly offer that would alleviate his financial burden? Yes. You may not be aware, the administrator continued, but the hospital has a foundation that offers financial assistance for families in situations like yours. We've seen it make a significant difference for many families struggling with the burden of medical costs. A rush of emotion coursed through him, relief mingled with uncertainty. But what if I don't qualify? Leave that to us. We can help you through the application process. That way, you can focus on your children, she replied, her empathy clear. Ethan looked over at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. He felt the walls that had been rearing up start to waver. Okay, he said slowly, then let us explore it. He could almost hear the sigh of relief from Clara, and it bolstered his resolve. As the administrator went into more detail about the assistance programs, Ethan's mind drifted back to Ava and Max. He could picture them playing together again, embracing joy and laughter rather than confining them to sterile hospital rooms. For the first time in a long while, he envisioned a life beyond the shadows of fear and despair. When the meeting ended, Clara and Ethan stepped into the hall, shoulders a little lighter. You did the right thing, Clara said, squeezing his hand. You let yourself be vulnerable, and it's paying off. I didn't expect there to be hope, Ethan admitted, a mix of confusion and gratitude in his voice. It's there, Ethan, she replied. We just have to keep believing in it. Yet, as they moved to leave, a knot of anxiety formed in Ethan's stomach once more. What if the solution didn't pan out? What if they still faced an enormous debt? His mind buzzed with all those what-ifs chasing after him. He wanted to anchor himself to the moment, to the warmth of Clara's presence, but the uncertainty loomed large. They reached the parking lot and saw his car waiting, but something pulled Ethan's attention back toward the hospital. It was the energy in the air, a sense of possibility that felt both exciting and terrifying. Clara, what if he hesitated, his thoughts racing? What if there is something else? Something bigger than all of this that could change everything for us? She looked at him, surprise clear on her face. What do you mean? I don't know yet, but I think we need to dig deeper into why we're here, and what we can do next. Just as he felt the adrenaline surge, a sudden scream broke the stillness of the parking lot, piercing through the quiet. Ethan and Clara turned sharply, fear evident in their expressions. What was that? Clara exclaimed, eyes wide. Ethan felt his heart thunder in his chest. Let us go find out. They rushed toward the sound, their earlier moment of hope now overshadowed by rising tension. What awaited them on the other side could change everything again. Ethan and Clara dashed through the parking lot, their hearts pounding in sync with the distant cries that echoed off the hospital walls. Each footstep felt heavier, the atmosphere thickening around them. As they approached the source of the screams, a knot twisted tighter in Ethan's gut. A small crowd was gathered near the entrance, murmurs and gasps slicing through the tension. Clara held onto Ethan's arm, her grip steady yet anxious. What is happening? She whispered as they squeezed through the throngs of worried faces. At the front, a woman knelt beside a boy who appeared to be in distress. His face was red, tears streaming down his cheeks, his sobs shaking his small frame. Ethan's heart sank as he recognized the boy Tommy, the child from down the hall who had been undergoing treatment for a rare condition. A nurse was trying to console him, but he seemed inconsolable. What's wrong with him? Clara asked, her eyes darting between Ethan and the scene before them. The nurse glanced up, her expression a mixture of concern and urgency. He just found out about a treatment standard that's been delayed. We're working on it, but he's afraid. As the words hung in the air, a jolt shot through Ethan. That fear was all too familiar. He thought of Ava and Max, how they had spent countless nights filled with confusion and helplessness. It was a gut punch that brought a surge of emotion. Without thinking, Ethan stepped forward. Tommy. He called out gently, kneeling next to the boy. Hey buddy, it's Ethan. Do you remember me? The boy's gaze broke from the nurse, his wide eyes searching for familiarity. Ethan, Tommy sniffled. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be sick. Ethan felt his heart shatter a little. I get it, Tommy. None of us want to wait. But you're strong and so brave. Remember that. As if hearing Ethan's voice grounded him, Tommy's sobs began to quiet. Clara knelt beside them, rubbing Tommy's back soothingly. We're all here together, okay? You're not alone in this, she added softly. Their simple words seemed to transform the atmosphere around them. As people began to share supportive whispers, Ethan realized something pivotal. Hope thrived in unity. A thought struck him, perhaps there was something more he could do. A sudden spark ignited within him. Ethan's mind raced back to the conversations he had with the administrator earlier. Clara, he said, his tone turning urgent. What if we gathered everyone? All the parents, all the kids? There's strength in numbers. We can advocate for them. Her eyes lit up, realization dawning. You mean like a support group? Exactly. We could push for better awareness and support. We should all know what is happening with our kids, maybe even set up a meeting with the hospital staff. Just then, the screams quieted, and the weight of the moment shifted. Ethan could feel the crowd slowly surrounding them, with parents nodding and exchanging whispers of agreement. Clara turned. "Let us do it, Ethan." As they began to organize thoughts amidst the crowd, Ethan felt a sense of renewed determination. They were not powerless. They could turn fear into something stronger. Just then, a shadow crossed their path. It was the administrator, her expression filled with surprise. "What is going on here?" she asked, sensing the energy shift. Ethan took a deep breath, ready to amplify their cause. "We need to talk together. For all our children. We can work together, can't we?" The administrator's eyes narrowed in contemplation, perhaps sensing the forging of a united front. "What will you say?" she asked, curiosity piqued. Ethan's pulse quickened. He just want to be heard. He wanted to unearth the solutions he believed were out there. Whatever it takes to change the way things are right now. The murmurings around him heightened, so many awaiting his next words. And as the tension hung thick in the air, he realized this was just the beginning. One brave moment had opened a door. A new chapter was waiting, but would they step through together? Ethan's heart raced as he met the administrator's eyes, determination swelling within him. This was his moment. The crowd's energy seemed to pulse, like it was lifting him up. Clara leaned closer, her presence steady and reassuring. A reminder that he wasn't alone in this fight. "We need to take action now," Ethan said, finding his voice stronger than he anticipated. "Our children's lives depend on this. No more delays, no more waiting. We deserve answers." Several parents murmured in agreement, their weary faces lighting up with a spark of hope. Ethan glanced around, seeing the fear in their eyes transform into a fierce resolve. "I suggest we hold a meeting. A place where we can all be heard, where we can share our stories. The more of us that step forward, the harder it will be for them to ignore us." Ethan continued, the words flowing faster now, fueled by adrenaline and the compassion he had for Tommy and the other children. Clara spoke up. "We can spread the word through social media, create a group chat. We can share our experiences, gather strength. We need to show them that we're not just individual parents anymore, we're a community." Ethan nodded, the vision taking shape. "Exactly. A united front. This isn't just about Tommy. It's about every child in this hospital fighting for their lives. Everyone deserves to be heard." The administrator looked taken aback, processing the surge of energy surrounding them. "I admire your passion," she said, her voice softer now, "but implementing changes is a lot more complicated." "Maybe so," Ethan replied, "but nothing worth doing ever is easy. Can you help us connect with the right people? If we get enough voices speaking out, we can't be overlooked." In the tension-filled silence, a small voice piped up from the back. It was another parent, a woman with tired eyes. "I've been terrified to speak out, thinking it wouldn't make a difference. But if we come together, maybe we can make them listen." Her admission hung in the air, and others started sharing their own thoughts. Before long, stories poured out, a mosaic of struggle, fear, and a glimmer of hope. Clara moved from person to person, gathering names and numbers, while Ethan noted down ideas and gems of inspiration. The reality began to take form as the group brainstormed ideas for the meeting. Flyers could be made, an online petition could circulate. A plan was seeded, each voice igniting the fire of possibility. As discussions flourished, Ethan felt a wave of gratitude for Clara, for the parents who found the courage to join him, and even for Tommy, whose tears had sparked this chain reaction. He could sense it, the tide was beginning to shift. But just as he felt hope blossoming, a wave of doubt crashed over him. Would they be able to follow through? What if the hospital didn't take them seriously? "Hey, Ethan," Clara's voice pulled him back to the present, her brow furrowing with concern. What if we don't get the response we need?" His heart sank slightly at her question, but he forced himself to look her in the eyes. "Then we push harder. We don't stop until we get answers." The determination in his voice reassured her, even if he wasn't fully convinced himself. Suddenly, the administrator spoke up, her tone much more serious. If you're serious about this, I can arrange a meeting with the head doctors for next week. But you'll need to be prepared. It's going to require all of you to really fight for this. The room buzzed with anticipation, the heat of hope sparking in their eyes. Would they really have their chance to speak directly to the powers that be? Ethan's mind raced with possibilities, the weight of what was to come settling on his shoulders. We'll be ready, he assured her, voice steady. As the meeting wrapped up and the crowd began to disperse, the adrenaline faded, and all that remained were their weary hearts. Could their united voice truly invoke real change? Ethan, Clara said softly, holding his gaze. We can do this. Together. But as they stepped outside, the cool air hitting their skin, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the real fight was just beginning. What if their efforts were wasted? What if change didn't come? And as those thoughts loomed large, a distant commotion caught their attention. A new group of parents had gathered, faces painted with fresh grief. Ethan's stomach dropped at the sight. What awaited them there could change everything. Ethan and Clara exchanged worried glances, sensing the weight of the situation. They quickly walked over to the newly gathered group, drawn by the low murmurs that wafted through the air like a thick fog. As they approached, Ethan's heart sank deeper. He recognized one of the parents, a father whose son had been in the same ward as Tommy. The man's face was streaked with tears, his lips trembling as he spoke in hushed tones with others who surrounded him. The atmosphere was heavy, laced with a palpable sense of despair. What happened? Ethan asked softly, his voice gentle, but it quivered slightly. The father looked at him, eyes wide with panic. My son. Lucas. He has gone. They said there was nothing more they could do. We didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. Those words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. A cold chill rushed through him, settling in the pit of his stomach. Clara reached out, putting her hand on the man's shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. The crowd grew tighter, and the air thickened with grief. As Ethan stood there, he couldn't shake the feeling that this could be any of them. Any of their children. Tommy's fragile breathing echoed in his mind, a stark reminder of how close they were to losing everything. He felt anger bubbling within him, an urgent fire ignited by the heartbreak around him. Look, he said, voice rising with conviction. We cannot let this happen again. Lucas is gone, and we should have been able to do something. We have to fight, not just for our kids, but for every single child facing the same fate. The group looked at him, expressions a mix of pain and determination. Clara stepped closer, her eyes shining. We have to honor Lucas's memory. We need to be loud. We can't let their voices be unheard. Parents nodded, fists clenching in resolve. For the first time, they were no longer just mourning. They were mobilizing, transforming their grief into action. Ethan felt something shift within himself. This was no longer just about him, Tommy, or even the organized meeting they had planned. This was about creating a force no one could ignore. He thought about the administrator's words about being prepared for the head doctors. They needed to be more than prepared. They needed to be unstoppable. Maybe we can find out who is responsible for the treatment decisions, Ethan suggested. We can research. We can figure out the procedures that failed Lucas and push for changes. Another parent, a woman clinging to her younger daughter, spoke up. And if we raise enough awareness, people will listen. We can share Lucas's story and the impact it had. Keeping the momentum going, Ethan took out his phone. Let us start right now. If we can set up a memorial page for Lucas, we can also highlight the issues all our kids are facing. It'll give us a platform. Clara, inspired by the wave of determination, pulled up her own phone. Yes. And we can spread it across social media. Tag everyone. We become a collective voice, a movement. Amidst the tears and the heartache, hope sparked anew. They began to talk logistics, planning how to create an online presence to honor Lucas while advocating for change. But then, amidst the intention and action, a shadowed figure appeared at the edge of the gathering. Intrigued but reserved, Ethan noticed the figure watching, her expression unreadable. Suddenly she stepped forward. If you're looking for answers, I may know a way to help. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Who was this stranger? And what information could she possibly have that could change their fight forever? The air thrummed with excitement and uncertainty as they awaited her next words. The stranger took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the group, lingering on Ethan and Clara. I've been following stories like Lucas S. for some time, she said, her voice steady despite the weight of emotion around her. There's a group of us parents, like you, who have been trying to expose the flaws in the system that got our children hurt. Ethan felt the very air around him shift. What do you mean? He asked, almost breathless with hope. She continued, we've connected pieces of information that can lead to real change. I lost my own child in the same way, and I've dedicated myself to making sure others don't go through that pain. Her tone reflected both the grief and determination that resonated in the fabric of the gathering. Clara leaned in closer. How do you know what's wrong? I've been digging into the hospital's practices. There are protocols they've ignored, and funding that's been mismanaged. It's all documented. She pulled out a folder from under her coat, holding it tightly. I know what I have might help you understand what could have been done differently. Ethan felt a glimmer of understanding flicker to life. And you think we can use this to bring attention to the issues? Yes, she urged, her voice rising with urgency. But it's bigger than just this one hospital. It's about systemic change. Together, you can push for an investigation, demand transparency. This is about ensuring that every child gets the care they need. Another parent, a tall man with dark circles under his eyes, stepped forward. I can help with that. I know some reporters who might be willing to write about this. His words fueled the fire of collective resolve sparking in the group. The stranger nodded, her expression encouraging. You need a platform, a movement strong enough to force them to listen. If we act fast, we can gather enough evidence to make noise. Ethan and Clara exchanged a knowing glance. The idea of spreading their message felt electrifying. With every parent surrounding them, they could create a chorus that would demand to be heard. We will be heard, Ethan vowed, the words ringing clear and powerful. Let us share Lucas's story and merge it with yours. We're stronger together. Just then, the shadows behind the mysterious figure shifted, and another person emerged. A man in a sharp suit, the kind of look that always whispered authority. He stepped forward, eyes sweeping over the group with a calculative glint. I overheard your conversation, he said coolly, revealing nothing. I'm here to offer help, but I have my own conditions. Unease settled in with the tension that hung in the air. Who are you? Ethan asked, a rush of protectiveness surging. The man smirked slightly. Let us just say I know how these systems operate, and I can be of great assistance. What kind of assistance? Clara stepped up, confronting him head-on. His eyes glimmered with something almost sinister. Access to resources, funding, connections to the right people. But know this, everything comes at a price. What do you want to sacrifice to get what you need? Ethan's heart raced. The fight for their children's future now danced on the precipice, and he felt the weight of the choices that loomed ahead. What do we do? He whispered, his heart pounding as they faced an unknown path, fraught with promises and peril. The room felt charged, the air thick with expectation. Was this the risky maneuver they needed to take? Or would it lead them further into a web of deception? Hope mingled with trepidation as he tried to read their new ally. And as Ethan turned towards the stranger, determination settled deep in his bones. What choices would they make, and how far were they willing to go? Ethan scanned the room, his mind racing. The weight of the decision pressed on him like a boulder. He glanced at Clara, whose eyes mirrored his confusion and fear. Their thoughts raced as the man in the suit awaited their response, an air of calculated patience hanging around him. What sacrifices are we talking about? Ethan finally asked, his voice steadying. It was crucial to understand the stakes before they stepped into this uncertain game. The man leaned slightly forward, his voice low and smooth. Time, loyalty, maybe even a bit of your moral compass. If you want to take on this system, you have to be willing to play by its rules. Isn't that exactly what we're trying to change? Clara interjected, her voice sharp with indignation. We can't just become like them. The stranger held up a hand, cutting off any further protest. Look, I know it sounds terrible, but you must understand. Real change requires grit. You're up against powerful entities. If you want to make a dent, you need allies, funds, and most importantly, influence. Ethan could see the others around him nodding, already feeling the pull of this new power. The gathering buzzed with urgency. Emotions ran high. Children's lives hung in the balance, and Ethan couldn't afford to ignore any opportunity, no matter how dubious. He swallowed hard. We want to do right by our kids. To honor their memories, not just fight against the system with our hands tied. Then let us cut to the chase. The man's eyes sparkled under the dim lights, revealing a hint of ambition. I can connect you with some influential contacts, get you the exposure you need. But like I said, you may have to bend a few rules to get there. Clara stepped forward, her voice a mix of defiance and curiosity. What's the catch? Loyalty, the man said simply. You may need to share a story or two that aren't exactly your own, make some adjustments. All I'm asking is that you trust me, help each other, and we all gain the upper hand. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan felt divided. He could see Clara's rising anger, the other parents itching for any chance to fight back. But could they really stoop to such levels? The uncertainty gripped him tightly. What can we do now? He asked, keeping his voice steady. How do we make this happen? First step, you gather what you have. The man began pacing, hands tucked behind his back. The documents, your stories, everything that exposes the negligence. We build a case that rattles the cages of those in charge. With the right connections, I can help you unleash it all. Ethan felt the fear seep from him, replaced by a flicker of determination. What's the time frame? Tomorrow if possible. The man glanced at the anxious faces surrounding him. You'll have one shot. Tear down the walls of silence around your children's stories. Clara stepped back, shaken. What if it backfires? What if we lose everything? We've already lost so much, Ethan replied, his voice resonating with both pain and strength. This is for our kids. We can't let fear paralyze us now. As the group seemed to rally behind him, Ethan felt the pressure of their shared desperation. Underneath it all was a beating heart of hope, an urgent pulse that reached for action. Count me in, said another parent, breaking away from the doubts that lingered. Soon heads nodded, fists clenched. They would fight. Together. The man in the suit smiled as if he knew he had them hooked. Now it's time to get to work. As they began to discuss their next steps, the door creaked open, and a figure appeared just outside, a woman with a familiar face, one they all recognized as an advocate for children's rights. Wait, she called, eyes wide with concern. You need to hear this, you're in deeper than you think. The tension in the room escalated. Who was she? What did she know that could change everything? Ethan felt his heart race once more, the stakes rising, leaving the path ahead murkier than ever. What revelation awaited them? The woman stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind her as if sealing off the world outside. Her eyes darted around the room before finally landing on Ethan. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice trembling slightly. But this is critical. Ethan felt the mood shift. The hope they had just ignited flickered with fear. What do you know? He asked softly, motioning for her to continue. I'm Alexis, she said, composing herself. I've been working with families affected by the system for years. What you're planning is bold, but it's not without risks. I know some things you should be aware of. Everyone in the room leaned closer, the air thick with anticipation. First, there are eyes everywhere. The entities you're trying to expose have resources you can't even begin to comprehend. They're watching you already, perhaps even monitoring this discussion. Clara crossed her arms, her frustration bubbling to the surface. Then what's the point? We can't be paralyzed by fear. Alexis shook her head. I'm not here to scare you. I want to help. You need a plan, a real plan. You can't just charge into battle without knowing the terrain. They play dirty, and they're comfortable doing it. What do you suggest? Ethan asked, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. We need to be strategic, Alexis replied, her determination shining through. Gather evidence, yes. But also reach out to journalists who can safely report your stories. You need allies in the media landscape to amplify your message, to create pressure that they can't ignore. They thrive in shadows. We need to pull them into the light. The man in the suit, watching the exchange with growing interest, cleared his throat. And how do you expect to manage that? Journalists won't just jump on board without clear evidence. I agree, Ethan responded. We need to be meticulous. Exactly. Alexis nodded. Build a narrative. Gather testimonies, but make sure they're rock solid. No room for mistakes. And in addition, I can connect you with a few trusted journalists. We need to move faster than they anticipate. What if they retaliate? Another parent asked hesitantly. What if by making this move, we put our families at risk? Alexis took a deep breath. That's the risk, but we can mitigate it. We need to work quietly, gather information. This isn't just a fight, it's a strategic operation. It requires precision and care. Ethan felt a pulse of anger rise within him. What kind of lives are we living if we're afraid to act? Cowardice is not our path, Clara chimed in, echoing Ethan's sentiment. But we need to be smart about it. The heaviness of the struggle settled back into the room, and Ethan glanced around. He saw the resolve shining in the eyes of the parents, the determination mingling with fear. They had already lost so much. They couldn't afford to lose more. Okay, Ethan said slowly, weighing his words. Let us do this right. We'll gather the evidence and build our narrative. We'll reach out to Alexis's contacts. But we need to think a step ahead. They might come at us from different angles. The man in the suit observed quietly, nodding. I like it. Each move matters. No wasted efforts. They began brainstorming ideas, strategies melding with hopes. The room a hive of urgency and careful plotting. Yet as energy filled the air, Ethan felt something nagging at the back of his mind. What if tomorrow comes, and we're not ready? He wondered aloud, echoing the concern that rested heavy in his heart. What if we don't even have until tomorrow? Alexis added, her eyes widening. We might not even get one chance to turn this around. As they discussed the strategies, a sudden thunder of footsteps echoed down the corridor outside. The noise ricocheted through the hope-tinged air, and silence fell over the group. Ethan's heart raced again. What now? What if it was too late? In that moment of stillness, the room felt alive with anticipation of the unknown. Anxiety hung heavy as they exchanged glances, questions lingering unvoiced. What danger awaited them outside? What was coming? Next, the door burst open, and there they stood. A group of hospital security enforcers, their demeanor threatening, eyes sharp with authority. The atmosphere thickened, and Ethan's heart plummeted. What's going on? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. One of the guards stepped forward, a badge glimmering on his chest. We need to ask everyone to disperse, he said firmly. This discussion isn't approved by hospital administration. Ethan's stomach twisted. Why? We have the right to talk about our children. Right now you're a liability, the guard shot back. The hospital can't risk a scene that could be construed as a protest. We're going to have to ask you all to leave. But you don't understand. Clara interjected, anger flashing in her eyes. We're fighting for our kids' lives. Perhaps you should take it through proper channels then. Another security officer replied, crossing his arms as if guarding the very essence of silence they had worked so hard to break. Ethan felt the walls closing in. No. We're done waiting, he said, voice rising above the murmur of anxious parents around him. If they want to silence us, fine. We'll find another way. We have stories that need to be heard, and we will make sure of it. The guards' expressions hardened, but behind them, the tension in the room seemed to snap. Parents began to step up beside Ethan and Clara, rallying together, a united front of determination. We will speak, shouted one mother, her voice echoing with the ferocity of a lioness protecting her cubs. The guard hesitated, shot a glance to his colleague. The moment hung in the air, potent and electric with potential. If you do, we'll take whatever action we need, Ethan interrupted, the words flowing from his heart like a mantra. This isn't just about gathering evidence anymore. This is about survival. For our kids. The air shifted, and a spark ignited. With murmurs of agreement swelling from the crowd, Ethan realized they weren't just scared parents, they were warriors, ready to fight for their children's futures. All right, we'll give you some time, the guard said slowly, his bravado faltering under pressure. But take this outside. And know we'll be watching you. The parents surged forward, their resolve a living creature, pulsing and breathing. Outside, they flooded the hospital's lawn like a tide of hope, hearts beating as one. Ethan felt Clara's hand in his, grounding him amidst the chaos that swirled in the air. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Once outside, anxiety morphed into a fiery hope. They huddled in small clusters, buzzing with ideas, solutions coalescing from the depths of their sorrow. Ethan stood taller, conviction steering his every word. If we want to be heard, we need to show our strength. Everyone grab your phones. We need to go live. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd, but determination was quickly woven into excitement. Let us show the world what we're up against. Clara encouraged. One parent shouted, yes. Let us raise awareness about how our kids are suffering. The words seeped into the hearts of those around them, infectious and empowering. With phones in hand, they began to gather, forming a circle of unity. Ethan stepped to the center, heart racing. Look around. This isn't just a fight. This is a movement, a commitment to truth. We'll speak for Lucas. We'll speak for each child who fights for their life and deserves to be heard. As they pressed record, Clara stood next to him, her eyes sparkling with fierce determination. We're not leaving until there's accountability in this system. Every child deserves care, respect, and a fighting chance. We're standing together, and we won't be ignored. Their message soared, transcending the hospital walls. In that moment, they became more than a group of parents, they became a force igniting change. Once their videos hit social media, the ripple spread like wildfire. Parents across communities joined in, sharing their stories. The raw authenticity of their mission reached far beyond the confines of the hospital grounds. Days passed, but the momentum never waned. Interviews, news coverage, every corner of the media landscape buzzed with their stories of struggle and hope. Ethan felt empowered, witnessing families rally around the cause, individuals using their voices for the very first time. But the fight was far from over. Faced with rising pressure, the hospital's administration scrambled to respond. Press statements were crafted, attempts for damage control initiated, but it was too late. Parents had awakened an unstoppable force. In a final meeting with hospital officials, Ethan stepped forward. You need to understand that we're not going away. We demand transparency and action. This isn't just about facilities and funding. This is about our children's lives. We're watching, and we will hold you accountable. The administrators shifted uncomfortably, realizing the power dynamics had shifted. Ethan felt Clara's hand squeeze his intensely, the bond between them solid as unbreakable steel. A moment of silence enveloped the room, but it was filled with expectation. With their fierce resolve standing tall, Ethan saw hope reflected in the eyes of the other parents, and in that moment he understood fully, love united could move mountains. As they left, people around him erupted in cheers, a mixture of relief and victory filling the air. Together, Ethan declared, looking out at the families beside him, we forged this path. We will honor our children with the same fierce love we show every day. And just like that, they knew. A new chapter had begun, filled with promise, hope, and the unyielding strength of a community arising from heartache. This was their moment. They had transformed their fear into action, and together they would make a difference. Now, I need all of you to channel that energy and support. You need to subscribe now to keep the movement alive. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and boost our message. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to be part of this fight. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting this movement.